Hi, everyone. We are so excited to be here today. Monet happens to be at a birth. And so I am going to be interviewing one of my good friends and a lovely midwife here, Colleen Maheswaran. And she is going to talk to us a little bit about home birth in 2024. So we're excited to get started and dive right in with her.
Hi, it's Monet and Jenn, and we are the co-founders of Birth Becomes You. We are birth photographers and doulas with over 10 years of experience. We've attended over 1,000 births collectively. We started Birth Becomes You to create a safe space for new and experienced birth photographers to share and grow. We aim to equip and empower birth workers to feel confident in the birth space and take beautiful, world-changing images. We believe in a world where birth is visible, where shame is absent, where fear is translated to power, and where each individual's experience is honored as valid and valued. We are so glad you're here, and we can't wait to learn and connect with you.
So, hi, Colleen. How are you doing today?
I'm really good, thanks.
Good. Have you
Hot
been
here.
busy?
July has been a little slow because I took some time off to have vacation with my family.
So important. So important. I'm actually going on vacation tomorrow, so I'm trying to wrap up all my little things. And we have to do this as birth workers. We need that time. So, well, why don't you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you and what you do and your practice?
So I am a home birth midwife. I have the title CPM, which stands for Certified Professional Midwife, and Licensed Midwife, which is what's recognized here in Michigan. I have been practicing for 22 years. I have practiced in Florida, Virginia, Massachusetts, and now Michigan.
Oh,
So,
wow. I did not realize that. Oh, that's super interesting.
and
Did you
Michigan
see?
probably won't be my last stop.
Right, right. Did you see a big difference in how you practiced in each of those states? Like, are there different regulations for CPMs in each state?
I grew as a baby midwife in Florida. I originally started here in Michigan, but then once I knew this was my path, I went to formal training down in Florida. And I grew in a state where it was regulated, there were laws, and those made me feel really comfortable. I liked having boundaries of things that helped keep us all similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew as a baby midwife in Florida and I loved it. I loved having laws. I loved having boundaries. It felt really safe.
Yeah.
And I worked there. I studied and worked there for a total of 9 years. I then moved to Massachusetts where there were no laws. It was called illegal, meaning there was no laws regulating it or saying you couldn't do it. So it was kind of a free for all. You didn't have to have formal training. You could take on any risky situation. And that did make me feel a little bit uncomfortable because me personally, I was practicing with other women that were taking on things that, maybe should not have been considered a home birth. Now, I won't get into the, should that be allowed? Because I do think women should have autonomy over their body and good informed consent, which is why I love midwifery. But Michigan got licensure in 2019, which actually is what sparked me to come home.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great to hear. Because I do like that they have the licensure here. When I was in Colorado, everything was very, just like Florida. There were rules, there were regulations. That's what the midwives had to follow. And there was not a whole lot of flexibility with that. And here, when I moved here in 2018, there was no rules or regulations. It was kind of a free for all. And then things changed in 2019, 2020, and then COVID hit. But it is nice to have that safety net of regulations, I think.
Because I honestly I love that we can't take a type 1 diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have had type 1 diabetics call me for care.
Right.
And my heart does want to help them,
Right.
and I think finding the balance where we can have good, safe care where they feel some autonomy over their bodies is like my favorite. But if there's a bad outcome of something that was maybe a riskier birth to do outside of a hospital, it just kind of makes us look bad.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, I,
It does.
but I moved here in 2019 and we did move back because Michigan got licensed. And I loved that. I love having that the boundaries. It's something that it's like a driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice that there's a repercussion for someone driving drunk. So when I moved here, our laws, by the way, are the best.
Mm-hmm.
We have some of the most lenient laws in the country, which is really kind of nice.
Yeah.
But I
Do you want
started,
to explain a couple of those so people know like some of the things you can do here compared to other states that you cannot?
so we are, like in Florida, we were not allowed to go past 42 weeks.
Same with Colorado. It was very strict.
And to some degree, I still kind of agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're working with a good solid due date, I don't know the benefits of going past 42 weeks, but there have been times where it was nice having the wiggle room of a couple more days.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not breaking the law. We still had to do a consult. I still had to offer her a biophysical and a non-stress test, which again, these are tools that I think can keep a baby safe.
Yep.
It does tell us the placenta is working well. These are things that I personally would want if I went to 42 weeks.
Absolutely.
But it's
Mm-hmm.
nice having the wiggle room. It's nice having that ability to do twins or breeches at home. In Florida, we could not do these things.
Mm-hmm.
And they're riskier births. So, they come with additional risks. Let me say it that way. I would
Absolutely.
relate birth to driving in a winter storm, right? Or just driving in general. You,
Right.
your ideal driving conditions are going to be probably like 10 a.m. on Sunday, on a clear blue sky day.
Right.
Non-ideal conditions would be really bad winter storm with whiteout conditions. So I kind of look at birth that way, like, well, what's our risk factors that are adding to this to help us stay safe at home?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, anecdotally, it is nice to have that wiggle room. My mother had both my sister and I at almost 43 weeks, both of us. And she felt like she knew her due dates pretty well. And I came 2.5 weeks late and I was a 6-pound baby. And then 7 years later, my sister came 3 weeks late and she was a 7-pound baby. Now, this is 40 years ago, and who knows what due dates were. But in my head, when I got pregnant, I just thought for sure that I was going to go to 42, 43 weeks. And it gave me a lot of anxiety when I was in Colorado to think, okay, here's this cutoff, this magical number at 42 weeks when I might not be able to deliver at home. And I didn't get to that point, so it didn't really matter. But it was something that went through my head. And I do think, when you have a little bit of flexibility on that and you can talk to your midwife about it, I think that's so beneficial for mental health in birth too. And not
Absolutely.
having everything being so rigid, you do have a little bit of flexibility.
I think that's the best thing about having a small private practice is that I know my clients, I
Mm-hmm.
feel their bellies. There's no other provider touching them but me. And I can tell, like, if a placenta is starting to calcify, I can notice the symptoms, the reduced fluid in our belly. We're doing kick counts, we're texting, we're talking all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different level of intimacy involved that I feel it makes this care even safer to go past 42 weeks. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be texting your provider,
Right.
oh,
Your
I only got
OB.
7 movements in the next,
Right.
last 3 hours, but my ladies text me stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you a story where I had somebody, I went to her home to do an auscultated acceleration test. That's my home birth version of a non-stress test. And I went to her home to do this test and I put my hands on her belly and I just could feel the outline of the baby. And I was like, whoa, where'd your fluid go? And I recommended an NST and a biophysical straight away at U of M, which is our local hospital that we transfer to a lot. We have a great relationship with them. And she started crying. She was like, I don't want to go to the hospital. I'm afraid. And
Mm-hmm.
I did my auscultation test. The baby did great. And I said, well, let's just count fetal movement. And I left. And later that day, I texted her asking how many fetal movements had she had in the past 4 hours. And she said only 7. And that was really dangerous. And so I said straight away, I said, you have to go to U of M.
Mm-hmm.
And her fluid was, she had no traceable fluid left.
Wow.
So, like those are the safety measures. And she was nearly 42 weeks. So it was a
Mhm.
good call. Her
Yeah,
placenta was doing
absolutely.
great. And so I just love that I can provide that level of one-on-one care.
Yeah, and that's so important. So, going back to kind of like the crux of the discussion today, I'd love to talk about like what you're seeing now in 2024 and maybe how that differs even just a little bit from years past. And more so, what are you seeing with your clients? Why are people coming to you in 2024 for home births? I'm noticing that people are much more aware of what happens in the hospital system and are more nervous to go to the hospital. And I've not seen that as much in the previous 8 years as I have in the last two. So I'd love to hear like what you're experiencing because my experience is very different. I have people, home birth, hospital birth, kind of from all over, but you're working with a very specific local population there. So I'd love to hear what you're seeing.
Yeah, interesting question because when I lived in South Florida, home birth was raging. We had been licensed for decades and it was really common to birth outside of the hospital there. We were all super busy.
I had no idea Florida was that busy. Wait, so
Yeah.
let's go back. What years were you there? I'm just
I
curious.
moved there in 2001. I graduated midwifery school in 2004. And then I practiced from 2004 until 2010
Okay.
down in Florida. And there was multiple freestanding birth centers,
Mm-hmm.
loads of home birth midwives, and we were all really busy. Great community of midwives down there, by the way. I'd love to say that. When I moved here, it was not that way.
Mm-hmm.
There's no insurance reimbursement. The home birth midwives here, I hate to say the word starving because that's, it sounds terrible, but they were not busy.
Yeah.
And it is such a different place now,
Mm-hmm.
post-COVID. I started my private practice on March 6th of 2020, a week before the shutdown.
Right.
And
Timing.
I told my husband, I said, well, if I get my first due date, like for the fall, that'd be about right. And bam, I was
Oh
full
yeah.
for March. I was full for April. I was full for May.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just, people were coming in droves to birth at home. And then after COVID, after it mellowed, we all assumed it would just go back to the way it was. But I think social media is the big difference,
Mm-hmm.
from when I started practicing. I mean, I didn't even have a cell phone when I started practicing. I had a
Yeah.
I put my
Yeah.
pager in my bra and went night clubbing. Like
That
this.
is so crazy. I talk about that, Monet, and I talk about that a lot. We're always like, what if we did this job prior to cell phones, which wasn't that far away from when both of us started. And we talk about pagers, and that's how like midwives got contacted. Or Kathleen, one of our doulas that works here locally with Colleen and I, said that it used to be like a midwife phone tree where you'd call the midwife's house and the husband or partner or whoever would be like, nope, she's at this place at this time. And then you'd have to start calling like patients' houses. I can't even imagine the stress level between then and like now, where you can just be contacted 24/7 all the time.
Yeah, which that has its advantages and disadvantages for
Right,
sure. But
exactly. Oh, we know, yes.
I going back to the difference of, 24 or just even post COVID. I mean, my practice has only gotten busier. I'm in
Mhm,
a very blessed situation where I turn people away. I mean, not that I love doing that, but I have more work than I can handle.
mhm.
And I feel really grateful for that. Now, I do feel like social media has been what kept the bubble in the air for us.
Yeah.
People were posting these, with your help, photographing these, empowering home births where people are catching their own babies and in their living rooms and seeing, the babies having the placenta connected for hours and,
Mhm,
that uninterrupted skin to skin. I had a home birth once where I had to do some inflation breaths on the baby right in the tub. And the photographer I noticed had stopped shooting. And I said, no, no, keep going, like keep shooting. This is part of her story. And so there I was with the baby, I had the baby's airway lifted on her shoulder and I'm just resuscitating and the pool is still connected to the cord and the baby was fine. He just needed a few breaths.
Mm-hmm.
And then went right back to mom's arms and he never left her.
Yeah.
And people see this and they see this and they go, wow, that's home birth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
Nobody took your
that's
baby?
that's absolutely. So you have not heard the episode. It hasn't even aired yet. I haven't even talked to you about this, but Monet and I actually recorded an episode about hospital birth, and we said a very similar statement where at home births, it seems like any resuscitation, not any, a lot of resuscitation and help can be done on the baby's chest, where in hospitals, we're seeing the cord immediately cut and the baby taken away immediately. And that is hard and traumatic for people, especially when it's not necessary. And so you allowing the photographer to keep shooting and encouraging her to keep shooting, I think is really powerful in the knowledge that you know your own skill, you knew what the baby was doing and how the baby was responding, and that the mom was going to want to look back and see those photos again.
Yeah.
I think that's really
She,
important.
she was a very special client of mine. I mean, they all are.
Right.
I again, like I think I have the best job on the planet, but you spend so much time with your clients. You spend the whole pregnancy. You start seeing them weekly at the end. Then you're seeing them in their home intimately for days after. And then the 6-week visit comes. You're like, what? You know, and then you start to notice, oh, well, there's, a new crop of women now in my care. And it takes a minute to like form that bond.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I love what I do. And that aspect of it has not changed.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I feel like has changed outside of just social media, it's been movement therapy. So much with that aspect of birth has really changed my practice, I think, the most.
And tell us what you mean specifically by movement therapy.
So I would say the average length of time I spent before baby came out of birth, before I knew spinning babies, the mile circuit, body ready method, all of these movement therapy ways of balancing the body to get the baby into an ideal fit in the pelvis is what's changed the amount of time I'm at a birth.
Yeah.
Average time would have been 8 to 12 hours. Now it's 2 to 4.
Wow.
You get that baby and that body balanced and lined up, and those babies, they come fast. I mean, sometimes so fast.
Right. We've
I've
had
had
some fast births together. So yeah.
yeah, and that has really made a big difference for me. I've gone to some of these, trainings and learned the things, and I practice them on myself with my own injuries. I mean, not necessarily the ones for pregnancy, but ones geared for sport injuries. I've had injuries that I could not fix with chiropractic care and osteopathic care. It was the movement therapy that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen the difference in myself, which helps motivate me to encourage my clients to do it as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important and a great thing to discuss and talk about. I also wanted to ask you about photos as a way of processing clients' births. As a midwife, are you finding that photography is helpful to your clients in processing birth, whether it's professional or cell phone photos? What are you seeing and how do you think that benefits your client, or maybe it doesn't? And how about, does it benefit you as well?
So, true confession, I took your birth
Yeah,
photography
she
course.
took our Essence of Birth course, a midwife who loves photos. And
One
we
day
love
I'm
that
going to
about
be a
her.
birth photographer. Right
Yeah.
now, I'm just too needed as a midwife, but
Mhm.
I have a huge passion for photography. And anyone that wants a photographer, I do my best to get them one. And if they, don't want that or don't have the money for one, I love taking pictures for them.
Mhm.
And I have a front row seat and
Yep.
I'll just pull my phone out of my pocket and capture those images for them. And it is so powerful. Sometimes there was a birth recently where the mother wanted photos but did not want a video of her birth because, well, I didn't have the videos for the other kiddos. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's kind to do it for this one because then my other kids might feel sad. Those
Right.
were her words.
Right.
And I said, absolutely, we'll just do photos. Well, her pushing phase was crazy long and very hard. She kept second guessing herself and what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? And, I kept reassuring her it's just baby's position. Well, sure enough, he was posterior
Hmm.
and big. And as this baby started coming sunny side up, I grabbed my phone. Dad was catching, and I just started filming it. And I thought, you know what? We can delete it. If she really doesn't want it, I'll delete it. But this is such a unique birth, and it's
Hmm.
so powerful to birth that way.
It really is.
It takes so much strength. And this poor kid had his cord. He couldn't move out of his posterior position because his umbilical cord was around him like suspenders. And so, as he's coming, the dad's catching and he's like, what do I do about the cord? I'm like, just gotta take it off, and so we're sort of whispering, while I'm filming, and she loved it. Seeing
Good.
that video,
Yeah.
seeing her body and her husband doing that was so powerful for
It
her.
really is. It absolutely is. Even with my own birth, I had like 8 years ago, I had Monet photograph it and she took some video clips and she asked me if I wanted the moment of birth photographed or filmed. And I said photographed. And I wish to God I would have gone back and said film because she kind of flew out really fast. It was like 50 hours of labor and then one like sporadic fetal ejection push. I don't know. It was kind of, I'm like, really? We couldn't have sped this up, but it was cool. And I don't have that because we have photos, which are great and I love them. They're amazing. But that video is powerful, right? Like you really get to see it, especially when it's unique like that. Posterior baby, face, eyes open. I always think that is just so cool. So
And it's cool to see what our bodies are capable of.
it really is.
I mean, it takes so much power and bravery and strength to, go through that surrender to birth the baby and then the pride you get.
Hmm.
I remember feeling like my vagina was shredding when I was birthing my first. My doula was taking photos for me, and my thought bubbles were, stop. Like, why are you doing that?
Right. Right.
I loved them. I loved my
Mhm.
crotch shots so much. I was
Yeah.
showing them to people at the airport.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it was somebody I was chatting with, and we had gotten kind of intimate, and she was
Yeah.
traveling to a birth. But anyway, those pictures are incredible to me.
Hmm. And I think it's universal, like if somebody else likes birth at least a little bit or was empowered by their own birth and you can talk about it with them and you have photos, like I don't know, like I would show my birth photos to anybody who wanted to talk to me about it. Like I just think it's the coolest thing and I love that you did that. It's awesome. Oh, the best. Well, thank you so much for being here, Colleen. This has been great to talk to you and just to get your perspective on home births and midwifery and in 2024. And I really loved hearing all of your experiences from Florida to Massachusetts to Michigan and everything in between. So thank you so much for being here and sharing that with us.
Thanks for having me.
And have a great rest of your day.
Have
And
a vacation.
yes, thank you. I'm so excited. My parents have their 50th wedding anniversary, so we are spending the week up north together as a family. So that will be a lot of fun.
Cool. Have a good time.
All right, thanks, Colleen. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Find out more about us, our courses, and other tools for birth photography at birthbecomesyou.com. And make sure to follow along on Instagram and Facebook at Birth Becomes You. And if you love listening, make sure to give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and subscribe wherever you listen. Thanks. Catch you on the flip side.